presents 2024 appropriation bill to joint session of the National Assembly today, seeks approval of borrowing plan.
Funding infrastructure in the face of dwindling financial resources, it has become imperative that we resort to prudent and external borrowing to bridge the financial gap.
A Nigerian Society of Engineers confers fellowship on Vice President Kashim Shettima and other outstanding Nigerians.
Former CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele remains in correctional center after failure to meet bail condition.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we drive forward on ending HIV/AIDS by 2030.
The global epidemic of HIV and AIDS began in 1981 and is an ongoing worldwide public health issue. According to the World Health Organization, as at 2021, approximately 40.1 million people had died of HIV and AIDS, and approximately 38.4 million people were infected with HIV globally.
That's the statistics that we have, Demola. But again, I'm just wondering if we know that, African region is considered the most affected when it comes to people living with HIV and AIDS. And according to, again, the World Health Organization, that's WHO, 25.7 million people were living with the virus in 2018. Now, of that number, 20.3 million people were said to be living with HIV, and of course they were found in the East and Southern African sub-regions, while the West and Central African sub-regions accounted for 5.4 million people living with the virus.
Yeah, certainly, Claire. The first case of HIV and AIDS in Nigeria was identified in 1985 and reported at an international conference in 1986. The first two cases, as reported by the Federal Ministry of Health, were a sexually active 13-year-old girl and a female commercial sex worker from a neighboring West African country.
Well, of course, we know that these are not the only ways of transmitting the virus. But in Nigeria, estimated national HIV prevalence rate is put at 2.1%, and specifically among adults aged between 15 and 49 years. Now, that translates to approximately 2 million people living with the virus, compared to our previous national HIV prevalence rate, which was put at 1.4% from the 2018 Nigeria HIV/AIDS Indicator and Impact Survey, and in collaboration with United Nations AIDS Estimation and Projection Package of people living with the virus.
HIV prevalence in Nigeria varies by state, with Benue 5.7%, having the highest prevalence, followed by Rivers with 5.2%. Others are Akwa Ibom 3.5%, Edo 3.4%, and Taraba 3.0%, placing fourth and fifth respectively.
Demola, those states, with those standing, have been like this for a long, long time, with Benue and Rivers, having, generally the highest prevalence rates, of course, when you aggregate, to the state level. But of course, like we said, the national prevalence rate is 2.1%, and it's gone up from 1.4% in 2018. But ending AIDS, HIV/AIDS by 2030 is an important part of the Sustainable Development Goals, that's the SDG. Of course, we know that in 2015, countries made the promise, to end HIV/AIDS by 2030, and that's one of the primary targets of Goal 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals, among other health indicators. And the HIV response to rather the Sustainable Development Goals response is that no one should be left behind, and that informs the 2030 targets.
Yeah, no one should be left behind. You're right. The AIDS epidemic cannot be ended without the needs of people living with HIV and affected by HIV and the determinants of health and vulnerability being addressed. People living with HIV often live in fragile communities and are frequently discriminated against, marginalized, and affected by inequality and instability. Their concerns, therefore, must be at the forefront of sustainable development efforts. Ending HIV and AIDS by 2030. How possible will it be? And what are the renewed commitment? Why is stigma and discrimination still being faced by people living with the disease? Our guest will provide answers to these and more in the course of the program. I am Ademola Adeoye. Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria this Wednesday, the third episode for the week. Claire.
Indeed, Demola, I didn't think that we will get to be talking about, prevalence of HIV and AIDS again. In those days, in the early 80s and 90s, it was a pandemic, so to speak. I mean, everyone was so afraid of going, to get tested, and then knowing one's status was a hurdle.
Because of the fear of stigmatization and
yes.
Discrimination.
Yes, and people thought that HIV was a license to
death.
To death, yes. But like we said, the statistics that we have before us, it's well, Nigeria indeed has made a lot of progress, but there are gaps that still needs to be filled, and that's again why we are,
in part of our discussion.
Yes, in line with the World HIV and AIDS Day, which is coming up this week. That's why we are focusing on HIV and AIDS this morning. I join Ademola to welcome you to the program. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak, and the program is live from our studios here in Abuja. As always, we'll be taking highlights of the morning news in a moment, and Mina Daniels is already in the news studio. But of course, much later, business news, and Chukwudiokuli Ubaja will be joining us for the newspaper review. Mina Daniels with the news.
Good morning to you, Claire and Demola. Thanks for joining us on the morning news. President Bola Tinubu will today present to a joint session of the National Assembly the proposed 2024 appropriation bill for consideration and approval. A communication to that effect was read by the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, during plenary.
I would like to underscore the fact that the projects and programs in the borrowing plan were selected based on positive technical economic evaluations, as well as the expected contribution to the socio-economic development of the country, including employment generation, skills acquisition, support towards the emergence of more entrepreneurs, poverty reduction and food security.
Meanwhile, after the presentation of the budget to the joint session of the National Assembly, President Bola Tinubu will depart Abuja for Dubai, United Arab Emirates, to attend the COP28 Climate Summit, also known as the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference. A statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngelale, says that the World Leaders Summit, which will take place on December 1st and 2nd, 2023, under the theme Unite, Act and Deliver, adding that the President will deliver Nigeria's stance on various thematic issues, including renewable energy and climate financing. While in Dubai, the President will also focus on holding businesses and institutions accountable, reflecting Nigeria's dedication to sustainable and responsible practices with active participation in key sideline events. Nigeria has the capacity of being a $1 trillion economy within the next 3 decades, but this can only be achieved if the country can re-engineer its manufacturing sector. This formed part of the issues raised by the Vice President of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, at the conferment of fellow Nigeria Society of Engineers on him and other outstanding Nigerians at the ongoing 2023 Conference of Nigeria Society of Engineers.
Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, we inaugurated in August, released a comprehensive reform of our tax landscape, has already completed since 1974 and is working on the next phase of this mandate.
The House of Representatives has adopted a motion to admit President Bola Ahmed Tinubu into the Green Chamber for the purpose of presenting the proposed 2024 budget to a joint session of the National Assembly. The House also received the President's request for approval of the 2022 to 2024 external borrowing plan.
President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and other dignitaries on Wednesday, 29th November 2023 to receive the 2024 budget estimate.
Those in support of this motion should say aye. Those against should say nay. The ayes have it.
To consolidate on achievements recently recorded in Kogi State, the incoming administration must set the right course by evolving and implementing policies that prioritize the empowerment of women and youths in the state. Nigeria's First Lady Oluremi Tinubu offered this counsel when she received in audience the governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, and the governor-elect of the state, Ahmed Usman Ododo, at the villa.
And in the near future, I am seeing Kogi to be trailing behind, if not overtaking, Lagos in terms of development. And that is why we are emulating and following the footsteps of our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Moving on, the issue of Air Nigeria has come to the limelight again, with the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Management, Festus Keyamo, clarifying that the fate of the national carrier would depend on the decision of President Bola Tinubu after his consideration of the report of the contract with Ethiopian Air. The minister said in reaction to the concerns raised by Nigerians and the National Assembly, his ministry has conducted a thorough investigation and found out some questionable clauses in the agreement.
They asked for tax waivers for 5 years, and you granted them to come and compete with your local airlines who are paying those heavy taxes. How? You want to create a monopoly. That's why when they tell you that, oh, we want to crash price by 70%, it's a lie. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
High Court of the Federal Capital Territory has adjourned the trial of the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria to January 18, 2024 for the continuation of trial. Godwin Emefiele is standing trial on a 6-count charge bothering and fraud preferred against him by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Due to his inability to perfect his bail, the former CBN governor Godwin Emefiele will remain in the correctional center for failing to meet the 300 million naira bail condition. Emefiele's counsel, Matthew Barkas, SAN, had secured the application for his bail earlier. Emefiele is standing trial before Justice Hamza Muazu. And that, of course, concludes the morning news, as I leave you in the safe hands of Ademola and Claire after this break.
The National Council for Arts and Culture introduces the first National Stakeholders Conference on the review of the past 35 editions of the National Festival of Arts and Culture, NAFEST, a platform for holistic and robust deliberations on NAFEST for wealth creation and a key player in the creative economy, in line with Mr. President's renewed hope agenda. Acknowledging and honoring their excellencies, the executive governors of the 36 states and the FCT minister for their contributions to the success of the past 35 editions of NAFEST. Venue, Chida Hotel, Abuja. Date 5th to 8th December 2023. Time 10 a.m. daily. All stakeholders are hereby invited to come and let's celebrate the bond of unity that our cultural heritage brings. NAFEST, the festival that unites the nation. Announcer, Otumba Olusegun Rushewe.
You're welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. Nigeria's crude oil production, including condensate, rose year on year by 30% to 1.6 million barrels per day in October 2023. That's from 1.2 million barrels per day recorded in the corresponding period of 2022. Alika Opanachi Arua has details on business news.
The report revealed that despite the increase, on a month-on-month basis, the nation's oil output dropped marginally by 0.7% to 1.562 million barrels per day in October 2023, from 1.572 million barrels per day in the preceding month of September 2023. A closer check on the production figures shows that the nation's output, including condensates, stood at 1.5 million barrels per day in January 2023. Then it dropped to 1.3 million barrels per day in April, before climbing to 1.6 million barrels per day in September, apparently the highest so far in 2023. However, despite the improvement in crude oil production at 1.6 million barrels per day, it remained significantly lower than the 2023 budget benchmark of 1.69 million barrels per day and the OPEC quota of 1.7 million barrels per day. Meanwhile, households and others in Nigeria are turning to biofuel as cost of cooking gas continue to rise. Bioethanol, a cheaper, renewable alternative to cooking gas, is becoming increasingly popular in Nigeria, as it is said to release far fewer harmful emissions into the atmosphere than traditional fuels and does not darken cooking pots. According to the United Nations, carbon dioxide emissions could be reduced by over 4 million tons in Nigeria if all households use bioethanol for cooking. Now let's take a look at Tuesday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Opanachi Arua.
All right, and that was the business news package put together by Alika Opanachi Arua. Coming up next is newspaper review.
You're welcome back. This is Good Morning Nigeria. It's time for newspaper review, and we have our reviewer here. Chooks, good morning.
Hello. How are you, my brother, Demola?
I'm good, and you?
You look good, really.
Thank you.
I'm happy your lips are professing how you really look. Hello, Claire.
I'm not your sister.
Well, I saw the suspicion in your face when you were.
Good morning. Anyhow, let's kick off with Daily Trust. Daily Trust has its lead story: Tinubu seeks fresh 7.1 trillion naira loans to fund agri, health, road, water sectors. Nigeria's debt hits 94 trillion naira, and rising debt profile worrisome. Must expand revenue base according to experts. And other stories: leadership crisis rocks Bauchi Assembly as court sacks Speaker and Deputy. Electoral reform: Jega advocates proscription of cross-carpeting and INEC unbundling. and 11 traders die in Kebbi road accident. Details of those stories on pages 11 and 26. And just a little below the nameplate, Kano election judgment disparity, urging judicial officials to be punished. NJC, and that's on page 30. Airlines must pay compensation for cancelled and delayed flights, according to the federal government. And Social Insurance Trust Fund cries festers despite Lalong's intervention and panel deepens probe. And just to move on to the leadership, and the leadership also quite a number of stories on the front page of the leadership, but the lead story, Tinubu seeks approval to borrow $8.699 billion. That's about 100 million pounds and 7.1 trillion naira in our local currency. Now, Kano governorship appeal, judge faces judicial council's wrath over clerical error. It's on page 4. Now, sanction in line with our self-cleansing process, Fubara Aliyu Kefas affirmed as Rivers, Sokoto, Taraba governors, Nasarawa speaker sacked. Above the nameplate, EFCC witnesses Claire Emefiele of 1.2 billion naira fraud. Nasarawa secures 3 mining licenses for gold and lithium. And other stories, Nigeria resists demand for oil production cut is on page 21. 18 IPOB members arrested over killing of DPO and inspector on page 17. And northern senators want electricity restored in Niger Republic. And the picture story, I'm wondering if Demola and Chukwudi will stand, will be able to compete when you see these healthy looking, chubby, well-fed NYSC core members, all ladies in a tug of war. If you see...
If they're chubby,
very
I don't
chubby,
think that makes them athletic.
Very chubby, very chubby, very well fed. I mean, you can see them there, but we didn't get to see the other competitors.
Did you get to hear gangling Finidi George? I am gangling. I'm not chubby.
You're gangling.
I'm gangling.
I'm fit anyway.
You're fit. Yeah. And you look it, my dear. You know?
All right, let's go to the Blueprint newspaper this morning. And below the nameplate, we have COVID-19, reps query water resources, ministry over 25 million borehole. The story, it's on page 16. Appeal court sacks Nasarawa speaker. The story, it's on page 5. Beware of ATM swapping fraud. EFCC warns Nigerians. That story can be found on page 8. Return Niger to democratic rule. Northern senators tell military junta. That story is on page 5. Kano gubernatorial appeal. Judiciary will redeem own image. Sanction erring officials. Petitions flood CGN's office. Group uncovers plot to cause unrest in Kano metropolis. The story is on page 13, and Tinubu seeks National Assembly's approval for fresh $8.7 billion, 100 million pounds loans. The story is on page 6. Senate passes 57 billion police trust fund budget. Chooks, it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we have 3 main stories we would like to talk about. The request for fresh loans. We'll also look at the judges, the judge that will not face judicial council's wrath. I think, in response to the public outcry over the error. And then we'll also look at, airlines and delays and cancellation of, So let's talk about the loan.
There is nothing wrong. Okay, you want us to start with the loan?
Yes.
I still think that Nigeria is financially healthy, potentially financially healthy. Yesterday, when the new chair of NNPCL was mentioned, and I thought it was the Senator Ayo Akinyelure, who was, I think I made a mistake there. It was a goof. I don't think that's the man who was appointed. But his name jumped on my mind because of what then Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu did in Jos. The kind of internal revenue generation profile regime that was instituted. That is
Lagos.
when he was governor of Lagos. That's
Yes.
Governor Ahmed Bola Tinubu.
Yes, in Lagos.
The internally generated revenue profile changed. I mentioned yesterday that the yellow jars were given cars to encourage them to collect rates from market women. If your child went to school and the parents came to look for something and they found out that there is a tax that the parent had not paid, there was strict insistence for the parents to meet such taxes. And you know what happened? When the tax regime was instituted and money actually came out, Lagos also showed what it was doing with the money. Nigeria can still replay or replicate, reenact what happened in Lagos during Governor Ahmed Bola Tinubu's time,
You know, Chukwudi,
at the national level.
Yes,
And I think that is what
We
is
can do it.
replicated. That's-
IGR
that
is
what
the secret.
That's what is
So let's
replicated
not
at
be
the
scared
federal
about
level.
No.
You know,
Let us look at this issue based on some empirical parameters as it affects, economics.
Yes.
And economic experts, indeed, they are not all agreed as to whether or not, our economy is healthy for more fresh loans. Some are saying, look, we are still within the threshold. The debt profile to the GDP, is still within.
No, the Debt Management Office did warn
yes.
outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari that, red lines there. You understand?
Yes. Some say we are still in good stead when you compare with other developed nations to borrow. I mean, U.S. is still the highest,
Yes, borrower. I agree with you.
Borrower today. You understand? But again, the issue is when we borrow, we would like to match this borrowing with projects, and that's where you want to begin to commend Mr. President.
Yes.
Because he has identified specifically areas where this money to be borrowed will be spent. And he said water, health, agric, and roads.
Yes.
So it now behoves on Nigerians to watch out, and to follow the money.
Yes.
Follow the money and ensure that the money borrowed is expended on those projects. And by the way, Mr. President has explained that this, again, is part of the approved external borrowing plan by the former president.
The former president.
Yes.
Look, economists will never agree. Whether you're talking about Rewani against Boyo of blessed memory now. Sam Aluko telling us that there's an alternative to dying, and that is living. Talking about SAP. And Chuo Kongo was saying, no, there's nothing wrong with So that will always continue. But the economists will never tell you that Nigeria does not have the potential to up its revenue profile.
We do have
That's
the potential.
where we're going.
We do have the
You
potential.
understand?
We do have the potential.
Yes.
And that is why there is absolute need to block leakages.
Exactly.
If we block leakages and then
excesses
and then expand our tax administration net, ensure that those government establishments, MDAs, that are owing, that are not paying their taxes, that are not remitting their taxes, do so. Government will have enough funds.
Okay, I agree.
Yes, government to service those debts.
I don't want us to dwell too much on this. Let's talk about this issue of the
airing. Yes,
the airing.
Judicial.
No. They have to pay compensation now.
Yes.
The one that you read the other time.
Yes, airlines.
The airlines
must pay compensation. I mean, that has been there.
No. It's never been enforced.
Its implementation.
That is the thing. That has never.
Who has been monitoring its implementation?
That is the question.
I got to the airport 3 weeks ago. 20 minutes to departure, and I was told, no, you can't get in anymore. We told you to get here by 45 minutes to departure. And I had to reroute through Owerri to Port Harcourt eventually. They were strict in executing the part of the contract I didn't keep. But when it is their turn, what happens?
Yes, I think the new leadership of the aviation ministry,
Festus,
yes, the senior advocate of Nigeria, Festus, he does talk tough. And so we're hoping that he will act tough.
He talked tough on my programs when I was presenting current affairs.
Yes, so
let's hope
that this time he will act tough on these because a lot of passengers do complain. Sometimes these cancellations and delayed flights are no fault of theirs. So let's quickly look at the.
But
yes.
we don't have time.
Let's just quickly look at before
Claire.
we just this erring judicial official to be punished. The NJC said he must answer for his error. I mean, it's a suicidal
error. We don't need to waste time on this. Erring is human. We agree. But there are some sectors of life where errors are very expensive. Particularly when you work in a highly cynical society like Nigeria. Those slip-ups get easily misinterpreted. Did you not hear, oh, that indicates that shows you the CTC, certified true copy, blah, 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 and all that. People will latch on to those and say, we told you that these people are corrupt. You don't want to give that impression because the people can deliberately misread you. That is why they're taking that kind of...
Chicks the boy,
yes,
thank you, thank you, yes.
Thanks a
lot. All right.
Review for this morning. I will now take a break. Good Morning Nigeria continues. Stay with us.
Centenary celebration of the evolution of political parties in Nigeria from 1923 to 2023, 100 years. In our democratic journey so far, a mission that midwifed the birth of nationhood and great...
All right, welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. Today, as we said earlier at the beginning of our conversation, our attention today is drawn on ending HIV and AIDS by the year 2030. So let's listen to the background report put together by Joe Sevotseng before we commence our conversation.
A dreaded disease recorded first in 1981. HIV and AIDS have lived on since then, ravaging not just lives of millions globally, but also the economy of the world due to huge investment on control measures, treatment and rehabilitation of victims. Latest research conducted by a joint United Nations program on HIV and AIDS in 2022 estimated that 39 million people globally were living with HIV. 29.8 million were accessing antiretroviral therapy. 1.3 million people became newly infected with HIV, while 630,000 people died from AIDS-related illness. It is also estimated that the East and Southern African sub-regions accounted for more than 20.3 million people living with HIV, while the West and Central African sub-regions accounted for 5.4 million people living with HIV. The prevalent rate in Nigeria is estimated to be around 2.1%, mostly among adults aged 15 to 49 years. This translates to approximately 2 million people. In 2015, the United Nations adopted the Ending AIDS by 2030 agenda as an important aspect of the Sustainable Development Goals. And a glimpse of hope came from the joint United Nations program on HIV and AIDS report in 2022, indicating that AIDS can be ended by 2030 through an outlined pathway. The report titled The Path That Ends AIDS contained data and case studies which highlight ending AIDS is a political and financial choice, and that the countries and leaders who are already following the path are achieving extraordinary results. It cited countries like Botswana, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe who have already achieved what it calls 95, 95, and 95 targets, meaning 95% of the people who are living with HIV know their status, 95% of the people who know that they are living with HIV are on living antiretroviral treatment, and 95% of people who are on treatment being virally suppressed. The report suggests increasing political will by investing in sustainable response to HIV through financing what matters most, evidence-based HIV prevention and treatment, health system integration, non-discriminatory laws, gender equality, and empowered community network as pointers to ending AIDS by 2023. But is Nigeria on the right track? What new strategies are on ground to stop the spread of the disease? And is the public responding well to adopted control mechanisms to end HIV and AIDS by 2030? Our guests on Good Morning Nigeria will speak for these issues and other related matters in a short while.
Thank you, Joseph Orton, for that background there. And we have seated right in the studio with us to discuss ending HIV and AIDS by 2030 is Dr. Gambo Aliyu, Director General, National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA. You're welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Also in the studio is Dr. Liu Zenken, UNAIDS Country Director and Representative for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Dr. Zenken, you are welcome.
Thank you. Great having me.
Claire.
Yes, we also have here with us Esther Hindi Malim. She's a member of Association of Women Living with HIV and AIDS in Nigeria. Madam Esther, thank you very much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, and I will start my conversation with you. Precisely because, I was having a conversation with my colleague earlier on. I'm just wondering why we're still talking about the HIV and AIDS at this time since in the 80s. I thought, it's a forgotten issue. But like our correspondent said, HIV and AIDS is still living on. So what are still the issues that people living with, the challenge?
Thank you very much. As you said, we shouldn't be talking about this by now. By now, we should have been, living a normal life, with the HIV virus and not having worries. But we're still finding ourselves here. And I'm happy that we are now looking at the right direction, whereby we are looking at the community, because that is where the virus lives. And that is also where the issues are still emanating from. Okay. And we can still talk of things like the stigma and discrimination, where it is still on the rampage. Because people living with HIV and AIDS need to have a free society where they can access their treatment, where they can live a life positively without stigma and discrimination. But one of the things is the issue of stigma and discrimination, whereby people still don't come out to access their treatment. People still don't feel free to say, I'm living with HIV, and what is it? It's a normal thing, and I'm living well, and there's no worries about it. But coming from our, society where we have a lot of culture, norms, and value, and where the HIV first awareness started, we can see the images that were then, and people are still living with that, at the mind that HIV is still a tag. Okay. HIV is still a situation whereby some people that are, not living a right
moral
life, of life, they are the people living with the virus. What of the children that are born with the virus? That today they are adults, they are women, they are girls living with the virus. They contracted it through birth, but today they have grown into adulthood, and they are still trying to fit into the life, because by the time they go up, the society feels that they cannot live a normal life. But we have come a long way whereby with the virus, you can give birth to a normal child as a woman. Without the virus, that can be prevented. We didn't take that part, and we are still giving birth to children with the virus. And the government have tried. We have a lot of policies in places. We have a lot of bills, for the right of people living with HIV and AIDS. But are those policies working? Are those laws working?
But what are the core issues at the community level? Because this is where you are saying we're having more
the core issues now is, I think, we have services, but how much of the services are people accessing because of the issue of stigma? Because by now we should have a situation whereby you can just go to the pharmacy and just pick your drugs and go. You can just come out of your house and just walk a distance and go and pick your drugs. But we still find people traveling to go and access their drugs at the facilities whereby you need to pay
transport to go and access your services at the facility. And then you look at the community, at the family now, if you are positive, for you to have support and love of your family, that people can just remind you, it's time for your drugs, go and pick your drugs, or the facility will just call, it's time for your drugs, if you can come, let the drugs be delivered to you at the, and you can keep your drugs anywhere and travel with it anywhere and access it. Okay. So, with the present situation, we need those environments where it's free, where it's free of stigma and discrimination, people can access services without any. But you still go to the facility now and you find people coming to access their drugs whereby they have to wait for long, or they have to join queues, or women are still afraid to go for their PMTCT services because some women now, once they are tested, they know that they are positive. They are supposed to go straight and start accessing the service, but because of the fear of stigma and then the fear of the society, they are still in denial. They wouldn't want to go and access their services. They are still in denial that what if my family knows? So that alone, that trauma, that fear is still there. Right. And then knowing that, okay, I need to have some money to transport myself. Maybe you are tested in this facility, you have to travel to another facility to access that treatment. Is still an issue. And women in our community, especially where I'm coming from the north, women are not economically empowered. And then women also need a lot of, support to do some of these things. The issue of gender inequality or gender equality, when a woman's rights, she has to obtain rights, permission from her husband to go to the facility, she needs the support. But if a woman is economically empowered, she's working, she's independent, that once she's sick or she have a problem, she can take decision on her own.
Independently, access her own.
Yes, and take decision on her health, and just go and access her services. But that is not there. Okay. So she needs to go back to the family now and start, deciding on how to do. It is her life, but she still have to go back and start discussing, and then now start consulting, how do I do this, how do I obtain this, okay. So all those issues are still there for us.
All right, thank you very much, Esther, for your insights there, for giving us the insights. Let me come to the DG of NACA, Dr. Aliyu. A lot of people have described that ending HIV and AIDS by 2030 is actually an ambitious goal that needs to, need to address some complex issues like what she has described here, the issue of discrimination, the issue of stigmatization, especially amongst the rural communities, the rural populace, and also having access to testing. How do we address this issue? The issue of stigmatization, the issue of discrimination, and how do we go about creating the necessary awareness amongst the rural communities?
Thank you. Let me summarize what she said. What has been the main barrier between us and ending AIDS is the issue of stigma and discrimination, because that is what is preventing people from accessing services and from coming out to demand for these services. Imagine if Nigeria has 1.8 million people living with HIV/AIDS, and probably 5 years or 10 years ago, that number is around 1.5. But for the last 20 years, after rigorous activities out in the community, we're only able, as of now, to have about 1.6 million people on antiretroviral therapy. And about 700 of them were discovered the last 4 years. Just to show you how things have changed. Over some 13 years, 14, 17 years before the last 4 years, and how we've fought stigma and discrimination in the last 4 years. One, with legislative action. There is a law, stigma and discrimination, and that law is now being domesticated stateswide all over the country. More than half of the states we have domesticated anti-stigma law. We're working with National Human Rights Commission to make sure that whenever the rights of people living with HIV/AIDS are violated, those cases are taken up by them. They have lawyers that are there waiting to handle cases of this nature. But above all, you see, it's not always by punishment you get to change people to do what you want. That is why we decide to say, okay, our issues are out in the community. And this time around, we're going to put community as center stage. We will discuss it, we will launch it in our World AIDS Day, and this is what we're going to do. That is why the theme of this World AIDS Day is community, community, community leadership. Let the community lead. What that means is that community leaders should know that they have responsibilities. No matter how much resources is put by Nigerian government, United States government, Global Fund, and development partners, and no matter the kind of document UNAIDS present and the awareness that is created, if we don't have the committees coming forward to decide that we can no longer allow babies to be born with HIV in our communities, we must do whatever it takes to make sure that our babies are prevented from acquiring HIV. We cannot succeed in terms of ending AIDS, because as long as you born babies with HIV, then your ability to end AIDS will continue to prolong. Why? Because they get a new infection. Now, you said 1.3 million people are getting new infection every year, and about 600,000 are dying every year of HIV/AIDS, which shows that globally is still a problem, and is still a problem of public health importance. Why that is so is because people are scared to come out and access the services. And even when they know they are HIV positive, accessing the services is difficult. Some of them have to travel outside their community to another community where they are not known to access the services. Why? Because of stigma and discrimination. So it is important, and this is the time for communities to understand: one, HIV/AIDS no longer kills. Two, you can live a healthy life with HIV without HIV making you sick, without HIV killing you, and without you transmitting HIV to your loved ones. How good can that be? One is, if you know you have HIV and you come forward and you access our services, what that means is that you have the life-saving medication that is given to you free. These drugs are given free all over the country. We have over 2,000 centers across the country where these drugs are given free, and the centers also provide HIV testing free. So what is community required to do? Community is required to show sympathy, to show concern about people living with HIV/AIDS in terms of their plight. Support them, not to discriminate against them, and not to make them feel bad about themselves and are helpless about their situation. If there is a community leader, what is expected within that community by that leader is to find out how many pregnant women do we have in this community, and have a healthy discussion. Have you accessed HIV services? No pregnancy should go without HIV testing done. If there is any HIV positive lady that is discovered and is pregnant and is brought to us, we have 100% success of preventing mother-to-child transmission. So what that means is that with the help of community, we can actually eliminate mother-to-child transmission, which other countries have already achieved.
Okay.
So it is possible in Nigeria, and we can do it.
What's the collaboration like with the community leaders? Because you have reeled out a lot of things that the government and NACA is doing right now, but I think the problem actually is awareness, lack of proper education. So, and I think the community leaders need to be involved in all this. Are you actually carrying them along, because they need to, because they will reach out to the people at the grassroots level?
Excellent. Thank you. You see, we have programs we do with faith-based organizations, that's religious leaders. But now we're expanding it. We want to expand it to involve traditional rulers, political leaders in the community. So we will be engaging, including National Assembly, because they are gateways to their communities. And political leaders, religious leaders, traditional rulers to take this awareness to churches and mosques for people to know, one, HIV no longer kills. Two, you can live with HIV like every one person that has hypertension live with the disease for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years and die with it. Just like every other person that has diabetes live with that disease and live healthy. So you can live with HIV and have a happy life, and you can live with it keeping the virus within you without allowing the virus to get to your newborn, and at the same time without the virus making you sick and without the virus killing you. These people that are dying from HIV AIDS are people that largely, one, either they don't know they have the virus and until they develop AIDS, or they know they have the virus but they don't adhere to medication. They know they have the virus, they don't even access medication because of stigma. And if you do that, then the virus will continue to hack down your body defense mechanism until it destroys it. And once it is destroyed, it will be free for all.
DJ, thank you. Let's bring in Dr. Zekeng into our conversation. I was going through some data and coverage level against the 95 target. Correct me if they're not, current. 90% of Nigerians know their status. 86% know are accessing treatment and are receiving, and 72% have viral suppression. Now, when you compare that to children, on the other side, they have 45%, and 31% having viral suppression. So I'm just wondering, so many questions, coming into my head. I'm just wondering, now, is that a gap in demand or supply? Because what we're seeing now is if you're having 86% who are accessing, treatment and receiving antiretroviral drug, and then 72 people are those, who have attained viral suppression, it shows it's an indication of, not having enough of these medications to go around. So have we attained a significant milestone in the rural areas that we're now saying, okay, the problem we're having now is in the community area?
Well, before I get to the specific of your questions, I really want to start by commending you, so for organizing this conversation. I can see DG Naka nodding. We need to have many of these conversations because, as you rightly said, not only around World AIDS Day, so it's a conversation that has, so to continue, because many people are of the impression that it's something, so just like you've said, like COVID, so which is gone. And World AIDS Day, which is on December 1st, is an occasion, so for us, so to know that we're still struggling with that issue. It's a reminder that we still have about 39 million people living with HIV and AIDS. It's a reminder that since we started about 40 decades ago, we have registered about 40 million people dying, so who have died with HIV and AIDS. But the good news is we have made progress. It's not a deadly disease as it used to be in those days, where people used to drop, so like flies. It used to be described as a slim disease, so that's how it used to be. Then when you look at my sister, my beautiful sister, so sitting by you, nobody can say she's been living, so with HIV. So I really think we need to put that, so into perspective. And the evidence today suggests that if you take somebody who's HIV negative and somebody who's HIV positive, and that person who's HIV positive is tested and be put on life-saving medication, life expectancy is the same. So we really, so to commend ourselves, so for the progress, so that has been made. I will come to your question about about us failing the children. Number two, what we have seen, and it was really clear on your report, we are seeing in sub-Saharan Africa that Eswatini, Botswana, Tanzania and Rwanda, they're showing us the way that this is something which is possible. And they've said in the report, the UNAIDS report, that it's a political and then a financial choice. I would say it's a political and then a financial courage. You need that courage, so to make that decision. To say AIDS remains a challenge, and in a country like Nigeria, it's not at FCT level, it's at the state level, it's at NGA level. Are we having the leadership, so of the governors which are required? So I just want to say, in a country like Nigeria, so that leadership spanning from FCT at the state level, at the LGA, it's extremely important.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. That's what I was asking. If we are done, with the urban centers, have we been able to contain, the new infections within the urban centers adequately?
Not enough. Not enough. Not enough. We've made progress in putting people on treatment, so globally, if you want us to be specific, in the case of Nigeria, about 1.6 million people are on treatment. And when you look at the new infections, which are occurring, we estimate that about every year you have about 75,000 new infections, which are really spread. They are still spreading in the urban area primarily, but they're also spreading in the rural area. But coming to your question of us failing the children on the 95, we really have made progress. About 75% to 80% of adults living with HIV and AIDS are on treatment. This is great, but where all of us have failed, so globally, and it's also in Nigeria, it's about less than 50%, about 52% only, versus 75% to 80% of the children living with HIV worldwide. Unfortunately, they're not on treatment. And then we know what will happen. To your question, it's primarily about case identification, finding those children, so in such a way that they can be tested, they can be linked to care and become virally suppressed. So the question, so you may ask me, what is holding back? What is holding back? Stigma and discrimination. It's a major reason that is also holding back, so if you know that you are HIV positive, and there's a likelihood, so of your child also to be HIV positive, so the community will be looking at you. Access to services, so access to services, making sure that those services, so that will allow you to test for HIV and AIDS, so are available, so nationwide. Unfortunately, they still are not affordable, available in all the places. Having the human resources, so to be able to do that remains, so also a challenge. That's why UNAIDS, WHO, UNICEF, Global Fund and PEPFAR have launched what we call the Global Alliance. So it's an alliance which will ensure that we end HIV and AIDS among children, so by 2030. It's a partnership between the government, the communities, and then the partners.
What's the framework of action?
The framework of action is basically calling for more leadership. At the end of the day, it's all about the leadership. So making sure that leadership, it's a call for action in ensuring that there's the leadership, there's mobilization, and then there's action, because we know what works. We know what works.
Mobilization and action.
To end AIDS among children. We know. It's not in those days that we did it. We have all the
thank you.
tools.
Thank you, Dr. Zegan. I want to bring in...
Before I get there,
okay.
So it's a call for action. It's a call of action, but it's also a call to reduce stigma and discrimination. And it's a call making sure that the community are involved in whatever we are doing. Okay. Hence, the theme of World AIDS Day, communities in the lead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zekan, for your insight there. And we have another guest joining us via Zoom from Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, Dr. Alabi Salam. He's the project manager and executive secretary, Kwara State AIDS Control Agency. Dr. Salam, you are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Can you hear us, Dr. Salam?
Yes, I can properly. I said it's very good to be here with you this morning.
Discussion this morning, we are talking about ending HIV and AIDS by 2030, and the focus actually has been on discrimination, stigmatization, having access, to HIV and AIDS testing and all. Can you tell us the prevalence of these HIV and AIDS in Kwara State, where you are?
Okay, thank you very much. The prevalence of HIV/AIDS in Kwara at the moment is around 1%, which is way below the national prevalence rate of 1.4%. Again,
continue your discussion.
Yes, it's 1%, and as we all know, World AIDS Day is an opportunity for us all to come to support all the efforts that we have been imputing into the HIV response space, both at the national and the subnational level. It's also an opportunity for us to create awareness and to unite in our fight against HIV/AIDS as a structured response in the country. The global theme, as we are all aware, is let communities lead. But at the subnational level, there is emphasis on leadership by communities to end HIV/AIDS by the year 2020. At the subnational perspective, there is it's impossible for us to really fight the HIV scourge to finish without having a united front. And that's exactly what has been happening between the subnational entities as all the states across the country and NACA, working hand in hand to ensure that we have a collaborative effort. It is very important for us to identify the fact that issues like stigma are key mitigating factors to ending HIV/AIDS. Stigma amongst the general population, stigma within the health facilities, which we have been working on over the years, and we are ensuring that stigmatization at that level is so much more reduced. I heard a lot of people talking about the issue of access. Access is an issue to most of our people being able to access quality healthcare services without mitigating factors within the health facilities. Sustainability of all the efforts that we have put into all these. DJ Naka was talking about our achievements. We've done so much in the last 4 years compared to what we had done in over a decade ago. There is need for us to be able to sustain this, and this can only be achieved through a continuous and structured system put in place. And most importantly, again, we are all looking at the issue of identifying those who are positive, placing them on treatment, ensuring viral suppression. As much as we are doing this, there is need for us to also, like we are doing at the moment, put efforts, investment into preventive efforts to ensure that as much as we are identifying those that are already positive, we are also preventing new people from contracting the HIV virus. How are we talking about communities? It is very important at this level. We have realized that we are putting our technical efforts, we have done so much, but at this point in time, we need to leverage on community systems to potentiate what we are doing and sustain achievements that we have been able to achieve over the years. One, the youth communities. The young people are the most affected by HIV. The major means of HIV transmission is via sex. Youths are the most sexually active. Our young population of girls, young boys, our adolescents, youths, there is need for us to really work hand in hand with this community of people in being able to achieve success. The key population community, they are very vital population group who are drivers of HIV. The prevalence of HIV amongst this community people is so high that there is need for us to strategically focus attention on programming interventions that addresses this population group. Again, even within our local communities, all the HIV positives, all of us will stay in local communities. There is need for us to create a support system in our local communities that will mitigate against stigmatization, ensure that there is a support system, just the way we know hypertension is a chronic condition, diabetes is a chronic condition. There is need for our people to see HIV/AIDS as all the normal chronic conditions that we have around, for people to be able to come out, to access care, to willingly tell people their status, preventing others from contracting HIV from them, and ensuring that they live optimal life, contribute their own bit into society and the economy of the country, and naturally live their life without spreading the HIV virus. Again, two important communities that we should also put in perspective are the religious community and the traditional communities. These communities are very influential group that give direction, so to speak, to our people. And having said all this, at the subnational level, most of the states, NACA started something this year, and that's the idea of identifying the 10 best states in the country who have the most robust package for HIV/AIDS World AIDS Day commemoration for this year. All the states are really putting a lot of effort into being one of the top 10. This is a very good initiative that is really driving more effort. But the idea is most of the packages, like for us in Kwara now, it's supposed to be a week-long activity, commencing from the 1st of December this year. What are the things that we have in line? There is a robust program on ground to interface with the religious group. Ensure that at this point in time, all religious houses, on this coming Friday, all the mosques will have their sermons themed on the issue, vital and important issues that has to do with HIV/AIDS, so that when people go to pray on Friday, they are being reminded on things to do not contract HIV, how not to stigmatize against people and all that. The same thing will be happening on Sunday. On Saturday, we're having targeted community testings, outreaches to create awareness within local communities, because there are some communities that the only access that they have to civilization, so to speak, is via the radio programs. So we are going there, having community theaters at that level. We are creating outreaches, testing people across hotspots, brothels, bunks where we find people. So a lot of testings are going around. Again, we are going to be having a symposium where technical deliberations are going to be happening. Implementing partners who are working in our states, who are giving us technical support, supporting the state structure to fight HIV/AIDS, are going to come and explain to us what they've been able to achieve over the years, what challenges they are having, what roles the state governments need to put in place to complement what they are doing.
Dr. Salem, thank you. Thank you. And I wish Kwara State the best of luck, in this competition, to be among the 10 best states, driving to end HIV and AIDS by 2030. But again, we tend to do things because of some incentives, or when the die is cast. So I'm sure that all these efforts now are just because World AIDS Day is just around the corner, and there is a bit to go, something to get from it. We know those at risk population. We know what their challenges are. Now, emphasis is on community leadership and case identification. Before now, how have you been addressing, this gap from the state level?
Thank you very much, madam. The idea is that the Kwara State AIDS Control Agency is the agency of government with the mandate to coordinate, and that cannot be possible without stakeholder involvement. The structure on ground has to do with interfaces with ministries of government, departments of government, like the Hospital Management Board that oversees tertiary health facilities, where people come to access care. Line ministries like Ministry of Education that will leverage on to potentiate family life HIV education within co-curriculum activities, where our young people within the schools are being sensitized, they are being given the requisite information that they need. Again, the Ministry of Women Affairs, the LACA structures, that's local government action committees. I made mention of something earlier, and that's a pointer to the fact that our interventions as a government is really paying off. Prior to 2018, HIV prevalence in Kwara, based on the HSS survey that was last done, was at 2.3%. When we did the NAHIS in 2018, Kwara prevalence came down to 1%. The average prevalence as a country in Nigeria today is 1.4%. So it shows that Kwara is doing certain things right. Again, beyond that, talking about the issue of communities, about some couple of months back, our officers were on the field for over 5 months, where we conducted targeted HIV testing across communities, 10 local governments out of 16 local governments that we have in Kwara. And the result was very interesting. And this was exactly what pointed our partners into where to go to in Kwara to work. So our mandate as a government is to take charge, to coordinate activities at that level and direct in terms of policy, in terms of oversight over what all partners are doing. And I can assure you, as far as Kwara State is concerned, we're on top of our job, we are doing what we are supposed to do very well, and things are really going on well. However, there is need for more collaborative efforts, as I've always been emphasizing, between the national and the local, and also more support from the government at the subnational level to invest more into the HIV space for these efforts, these achievements that we've been able to make, to be sustained. Because as it were presently, most of the financial investment into the HIV space is premised on support from partners. There is need for government, both at the national and subnational, to do more. As much as we will drive our communities to support and complement the efforts that we are doing technically as the coordinating agency, as the agency in charge of overseeing these activities, there is also need for more investment from government. Most of the drugs that we are talking about that is free, readily available, are being supplied by partners. However, government is contributing in terms of technical support, the personnel who are driving all this. And like I said earlier on, we have done a lot, not only in Kwara. There are several states across the country that are doing very well. But for us to be able to sustain our achievements, there is need for all levels to be on the same page. If not, we know the globalization of HIV infection. If you're able to fight HIV in Kwara, and your state is not able to do the same, there will be transmission or globalization. People with HIV will move across states and across borders. So all of us as a country, at the national, subnational, need to be on the same facet, on the same level, for us to be able to fight HIV/AIDS to finish. A lot of work is being done, and I can show you.
Okay, Thank you, Dr. Salem, for your insight there. He has raised a lot of issues there, Dr. Aliu Naka, DG Naka, and I wanted to speak to some of the issues that he raised. The issue concerning, coming up with initiatives, to drive, these HIV and AIDS awareness, and also the financial, providing the financial level playing ground for people that are affected with the disease to be able to come out for testing. Then how do we actually, because the major thing there is fighting stigmatization and discrimination. How do we tackle this challenge?
Thank you. Again, there is one thing that he said that is very important, and this is sustainability. Whatever you begin, and no matter how robust a program is, if you lack ability or capacity to sustain it, there is every tendency that you slip back. And this is why 2 years ago we started something with United Nations Joint Program on HIV/AIDS, with PEPFAR and Global Fund and the government of Nigeria, and we call this alignment. So in this alignment, the central focus there is sustainability. How do we streamline HIV service in such a way that beyond 2030, when the government has taken full responsibility and ownership, these services can be sustained, and can be sustained at a rate we are seeing them now, but at a much cheaper level, which is now coming to the point you raised on initiative. What initiative are we bringing in place that will enable us to deliver more with little resources? And that is what we have been cracking our heads on for the last 2 years. And I'm happy to say we've come with a lot of things. And we have what we call now the new business model, where we put the state in the driver's seat. This new business model is going to be launched in the next 2 days. Okay. And from next year, we will start seeing states' participation, active participation on HIV/AIDS. Why? Because we realize if we don't put state in the driver's seat, whatever we are planning can never be sustained. Reason being, 90% of facilities where HIV services are given nationwide belong to state. 90% of our health service providers, human resources for health, that provide these services are state-owned. They belong to state. And 90% of patients that are treated also belong to state. So states are integral partners that if we don't pay attention and we don't put them in the driver's seat and we don't give them the necessary resources for them to compete and to see initiative among them, we are unlikely to achieve what we want to achieve beyond 2030. Now we have the big money. PIFA, Global Fund, and the government of Nigeria is doing its best. I can say government has been very faithful, and you know, we've been very encouraged by federal government, and we are not lacking in terms of federal government assistance. Government is always coming to our aids. However, are we doing the same at the state level? This is where the problem lies. So now going forward, we will use all the resources we have from PIFA, from Global Fund, and the one we generate centrally to now provide states with the necessary resources and with enabling environment for them to take charge, to implement and to lead. Just like we are asking the community to lead, we want the state leading. So we will see where the state is lagging and where errors are being committed so that we can correct them. By the time we approach 2025, we want to see virtually 36 states and Abuja, you know, are driving the response, so that as we approach 2027 and going towards 2030, we are comfortable, states are driving this and different states are having their different initiative and we are seeing the results. And we are having the same level of response being sustained. Okay. If we achieve that, then we are comfortable. Come 2030, we are home and dry.
Home and dry. DJ, thank you. DJ, thank you. We hear, let me go now into treatment, and we hear that some patients, you know, still have to pay for antiretroviral drug.
That is by choice. Any patient that pays for antiretroviral drug is by their choice. If you decide to go to private hospitals to access service, and that private hospital is not one of the centers that we provide the free services, they will charge you. And if you have money, you pay. However, if you don't have money to pay for the private services that are provided exclusively for the rich, we have services for you, and these services are free. All you need to do is call our centers at NACA 6222 and find out, or go to our state representatives where you have the SACAs. They will tell you where these services are being provided. And you see, we cannot end AIDS without teaching Nigerians and without encouraging Nigerians to come out and demand for this service. Once Nigerians start demanding for HIV services, that's the end of it.
Let me just interject you there. You know, because I remember in the 80s when these old things started, we used to have a lot of promos, jingles on HIV and AIDS where you can access treatment, fight against discrimination, but we don't have that these days. What is happening?
So you have funding streams that fund different programs and different activities. We have prevention programs, we have treatment programs. And now that we are actively engaged in case findings and enlisting people on treatment, you will see the prevention to some extent suffers because the amount of money that is being pumped into prevention slows compared to what it was at the beginning, and is logical. At the beginning, people don't know. They are not aware. They don't know much about it. So you want to saturate the community and you want to take the information, you know, to the doorsteps, which you guys have done. You've helped us take this information to every nook and cranny. Now, even at the rural area, when you pick up someone and they say, what do you know about HIV? Tell them in the local language they know. They will tell you about it. However, what is difficult is people living the prevention life, which means behavioral change is a disease of behavior, and as long as people are not ready to apply protective measures to reduce risk-taking, you will see HIV coming. What we do recently is to get medicine, you know, that will help also in prevention. And this is exactly what is being provided to key affected population.
Yes. You know, before we come to ESSA, Dr. Leo, Dr. Salim said something which I thought by now, you know, should have been a thing of the past. He said among the risk population in Kwara State are, you know, youths who are active, actively engaged in sex and all that. Now, why is that replaying? Because in the past, yes.
Dr. Zekan, before you answer that question, we'd like to take a break now. Stay with us.
Thing new is.
Yeah, welcome back. If you are still joining us, you are still on to Good Morning Nigeria, coming to you on the network service of the NTA. And our discussion this morning is on ending HIV and AIDS by 2030. And before we went on break, Dr. Zekan was going to respond to the question thrown by Claire. And okay, I wanted to respond to that before I ask another question.
So before we go into that, I've been hearing a little bit people beating around the bush, so key population, whatever it is.
Yeah,
we may like
population.
it or we may not like it. Key population, by international definition, we're talking about men having sex with men.
Men, yes.
Whether we like it or not, they are around. You're talking about female sex workers. Talking about people who inject drugs. You're talking about transgender. You're also talking about people who are in prison settings and then confined environments. So if we really want to make sure that no one is left behind, even in our terminology, I'm not promoting that, but I'm saying this is a reality. This is a fact, and evidence shows, as we've heard from Kwara and in many other countries, that they have a much more higher prevalence. So we need to acknowledge, we need to make sure that they have access to the necessary prevention, treatment, and care services. You've mentioned, so in those days we used to have jingles and so on and so forth, so we are moving into a situation where there's so many competing priorities. And then what is holding back the response is what? It's complacency, it's fatigue, it's denial. Okay, so how do we ensure, again, as I said in the beginning, so beyond World AIDS Day, not only in Abuja, but in all the states and the 774 LGAs, we have this renewed conversation to recreate a sense of urgency that it is not yet over. And then the theme even of the ICASA, which starts so next week, is about HIV and AIDS. It's not yet over. Even if we have made progress, so if we stop, we're going to go back and then slide back. So young people, basically they're sexually active, so, and for some of us who have been in the AIDS response now for almost 40 years, the ABC is still available. It's about educating around abstinence. It's about ensuring that, so you are faithful. It's still possible. Then we use condoms, so when you cannot be in those environments. Do we do it in isolation? No. We're promoting the issue of integration. How is that, so integrated into your sexual reproductive health and right? How do we put in a situation of gender-based violence? How do you make it in a situation of youth participation, and leadership? And whether we like it or not, some of the young people, because of the peer pressure, so because of the pressure that they do have, how do we ensure that there are all those economic opportunities, so that will make sure, especially the young girls, so living in abject poverty, so how can we make sure that we can also empower them in such a way that from the economic standpoint, so they can stand, they can have that ability to negotiate sex when it is possible. So those old concepts that were there yesterday, they're still valid. We need to continue to educate, promote, and then making sure that we can have access to services. Last thing, where are the young people? Young people are on the virtual space, so young people, most of them are on the virtual space. So where do you find them? So we need to go out there, find them in the virtual space on those different platforms, and ensuring that they can have access to services, create that awareness raising, and then tell them where they can go and have condoms, where they can go and be tested, where they can have comprehensive information. And maybe also get some role models models, so within the society that can drive, so from the entertainment, from the political space, and so on and so forth, from the community, and so that they can continue, so to have those conversations, educate, access to services.
Okay. What's UNAID's key support to drive this community intervention response?
The UN, by definition, as the UN, as our competitive advantage is about the advocacy. Our competitive advantage is around ensuring that we establish the necessary partnership. Our competitive advantage is working with NACA, civil society organization, to make sure that we provide technical support. Our competitive advantage is ensuring that we share best practices, we develop the necessary policy, and then also we play a key role in terms of accountability. But specifically, in the case of the community, we realize that the community have difficulty in even having the capacity. We've seen in some of the situations where government do not even recognize that they need to work with communities. So we advocate, we're telling Gambo, we're telling each and everybody in NASCAM that it is important, so with the community. If it is with the community, without the community, it's against the community. So that advocacy that we do, that evidence that we do provide, they've got issues around stigma and discrimination. Yes, I want to challenge my brother, Dr. Gambo, so we've passed the anti-stigma discrimination law in terms on paper, but is it really implementing? So let's make sure that we empower the community to go out there and then do that survey in ensuring that, so the act are implemented. You've mentioned, so fee for service to be an obstacle, so can we empower the community in such a way that, so they can also go out there and then be free. Lastly, we've been working with NEP1s and then other programs in putting in what you call community-led monitoring. Community-led monitoring is giving power to the community in such a way that wherever they are, they can ensure that services are available, they're affordable, so, and then they're for quality. So we will not be able to end AIDS if we do not put the community. It's the last mile, as Dr. Gambo has mentioned. They need to be empowered and then play that lead role.
Thank you very much for your insight there, Dr. Zeke. Let me bring in Esther into the conversation once again now. We've been talking about the issue of insufficient access to testing and treatment, limited access to affordable and convenient HIV testing and all that. What is your own experience, your association?
Thank you very much, and I'm happy with the DG talking about now let the state be in charge. They want to empower, because I think whatever that we are talking about, these services, the lack of service, they are at the community and at the state level, at the local government. So now if the states are being empowered and they are being put in front, I think this problem now will be solved. But the issue of access to services, access to care as a person living with HIV and AIDS, inadequate, will I say, or lack, the beginning is where the services are for you to go and access it. And then accessing also the services when you go to the facility, we know the HIV drugs are free. But there are other things that you need to pay for to fully obtain the
so it's not totally free.
It's not totally free. Okay. It's not totally free. The drugs is free.
The drugs
is free. But there are other services that you need to pay for.
So I mean, you're just lying out there.
Yes. So there are other services that you need to pay. There are other tests that you need to pay for, which, if you look at it, sometimes they are on the high side. Okay. And for somebody that is coming from a rural community to come and pay for such services, where you find women cannot even feed their family very well, they are looking for where to eat, they can't afford that. And that particular test or that particular drug is very important to that person at that particular time. And if he cannot afford it, what comes of that person? He will go back home and sit down, and at the end of the day, he will develop more other complicated issues. So that is also there. And then the person that comes to the hospital, or say a person living with HIV coming to the hospital and not find the environment, a friendly environment for you to access your services or to get, and then coming with other issues that you also need to attend to, issue of maybe counseling. You might come with depression, you might come with other underlying factors that need to be attended to. And when you come, the doctor or the person is only interested in, okay, just take your drugs and go. So if we can have like a kind of integrated services, whereby when you come to access your service in the hospital, you find it easy, or you are being referred to access other services without any difficulties or without any high charges for you to go. You go in one hospital attendant, you can attend these services and just go back home. But when you're asked to maybe go back and come back again, or refer to another facility, or go to a private place whereby you need to pay for more to access that service, it finds it difficult for you. So at the end of the day, and the fear is that, okay, it's because I'm HIV positive. That alone is something. But when you come as a normal person that, okay, I'm sick, I've come to the hospital, we need to talk about HIV. We need to talk more about HIV wherever we find ourselves without that fear of discrimination. Just like we said, to me, having HIV is better than having diabetes. Yeah, because I can eat whatever I want to eat. I don't have the fear of today my insulin will be high or will be low. All I know that I'm living with the virus and I'm taking the drugs. And I'm free to eat anything and do whatever I want to do, exercise and go to places. And I know that in the nearest future, I will not be down. So that fear, that fear should be removed, because the only thing is that stigma. When that stigma is not there, then a person living with HIV and AIDS is doing very well.
Esther, thank you. Let's bring in Dr. Alabi Salem. If you're still with us, Dr. Salem, thank you. Esther has just talked about, some of the key challenges, of course, at the community level. She's talked about cost and access to service centers. For instance, she said that, there are situations where patients will go for testing, in one place and then access services in another place. And of course, the cost in doing that, it's another challenge. So in terms of proximity to service centers, what is it like in Kwara State, and how is the state government taking ownership of response mechanisms?
Thank you very much for that question. There are a lot of issues concerning access to care and quality of care. But basically, one of the major issues as regards having access to care services is the issue of coverage. We are evolving, and if you understand from what everybody has been talking about, we are getting better over the years. We had a lot of resources at our disposal at some time in the past. Presently, major bane of our response is the fact that resources are dwindling at a very high rate. In the past, and for some states, let me give you a classical example. We have around over 700 health facilities that can deliver prevention of mother-to-child care services in Kwara State. However, just only about 20 of such facilities are being directly supported to provide such services for Kwarans. What is the implication of that? The drugs are free, the drugs are readily available, the healthcare professionals are cut across all these facilities I've just made mention of. Out of these 720 health facilities, about 560 thereabout of such are government-owned facilities that have the capacity to deliver prevention of mother-to-child care services. That means every pregnant woman would be given all the package of prevention if inadvertently one of them is HIV positive, to prevent them from transmitting such virus to their unborn child. However, just 20 of these facilities are being supported by implementing partners operating in our states. And that takes me back to the point I raised in my earlier submission, to the fact that there is need for us to plow more resources. There is need for us to work together so that we'll be on the same template. The issue of stigmatization is also real. When was the last time? Because we are talking about a lot of resources that have been plowed into prevention services in the past. It's supposed to be a continuous thing. You cannot say 10 years ago, we spent $2 million training healthcare workers on how to prevent or now not to stigmatize against patients that come to access care within the facilities. Most of these healthcare staff are either retired, transferred into some other areas. There are some mistakes that we made in the past that we are just realizing. And like I said, investment now, there need to be more to come from the government angle. Government is trying, to be very sincere with you. They pay the salaries of all the staffs, all the other equipment and things that are used to deliver services are being provided. But there is need for us to have a structured access. Let me create an hypothetical scenario. Most of the agencies in Nigeria today, so to speak, are doing well. Look at the National Health Insurance Agency. Look at National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Look at the NCDC. The reason why these agencies are working practically well is because they are not depending solely on government appropriation. They are being able to access funding from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. There is need for government to think about how to better support NACA, how to make more resources available to NACA, and by implication, such resources will trickle down to the subnational. To be very sincere with you, every system has its own issue. NACA is trying its best, but there is need for more financial appropriation, more support, all the things that we need to do to increase coverage, to increase access, to prevent stigmatization at all these levels. We all have this capacity, but without direct financial appropriation and funding, it would not happen. So there is need for more support for NACA beyond what is being given to NACA at the moment, in the sense that there should be beyond we are appropriating so amount for NACA in a year. How does NACA have access to real monies to be able to take charge? And like I said, by implication, if NACA is better empowered, it will translate to the subnational. So all these problems are all talking about, we don't have coverage, is because all these services are being provided solely by partners. NACA needs to be better empowered.
All right.
NACA knows how to do it.
Dr. Salem, thank you very much for very much for your thoughts there, Dr. Salem. Thank you. Now let me come to DG NACA. I mean, he has canvassed vigorously for NACA being funded, and the issue of funding actually is germane in this fight against the HIV and AIDS. There is need for us to have adequate and sustainable fund for us to be able to drive this. So how comfortable is NACA when it comes to funding?
A very difficult question, because I would love to have all the money I needed, to do what we want to do nationwide. However, we must face reality from when it comes to appropriation. Recently, I ran to the president seeking for support to increase the number of people that are on treatment supported by government from 100 to 150,000, and the president pledged to make this available. So we're very grateful to President Tinubu for listening to our plea and for coming to our aid. But that said, you see, as I was saying, the federal government has only 10% of facilities, patients, and human resources for health where these services are delivered. But we are doing more, and we will continue to do more. What we want to do, as we have done in the recent past, we established what we call HIV Trust Fund of Nigeria, which is solely initiated by private sector and is driven by private sector. We have had it launched almost a year and a half ago. This time around, we want to see how we work with them to redeem all the pledges that were done at the launching, and at the same time to see how Nigerians can key into it, especially as part of corporate responsibility of private sector, to donate into that pool. That will help us do more, and that will help us also cover some gaps that we are now seeing where money used to come, as Dr. Alabi is saying. Money used to come and now no longer is coming. That money that used to come was either coming from World Bank, which is a loan, or what's coming from United States PEPFAR program and now no money that is put there, or global fund. However, we want to see domestic resources being generated so that we can channel them to those states and to those facilities and localities, especially rural areas. And the good thing is that these resources, when they are garnered, especially the HIV Trust Fund, is not going to be managed by us. Okay. Government is not managing the resources garnered by private sector. Rather, we tell them, we give them our checklist, our need. And then they look at our needs, yes, and then they make the procurement and deliver.
We have to round off our conversation, but I would just like to ask you one question which Dr. Salim also raised about mainstreaming HIV and AIDS cures into the NHIS. Is that in the pipeline too?
It's in the pipeline. This is part of the sustainability plan we're talking about. Mainstreaming, integration. When you hear integration, looking at our path now from now to 2030, the discussion we're holding is that what is it that we have currently now that will have to go before 2030, so that beyond 2030 we have those things that we think we can keep, and what is it that is not there now that need to come in, so that post 2030 we have an integrated system, a service that is owned by the country, and something that is now being handled and led solely by the country. The country is leading. Right now, is largely funded. Our program is largely funded. 85% is largely funded by United States government and Global Fund. Okay. We're looking at a situation where at least half of these resources by the time we approach 2030 will come domestically.
Okay, Dr. Zeka.
On the funding, very quickly, we saw from the NICE background 4 countries in sub-Saharan Africa getting to the 95. What are the game changer? They did 4 things. On the political and financial commitment, they are ensuring that they use the science and the evidence to inform the programs. Yeah. Number 2, they are making sure that we break down the barriers around stigma, discrimination, gender-based violence. Yes. Thirdly, putting the community at the center. But most importantly, allocating more resources and making sure that those resources are better used.
Thank you.
A country like Botswana funds about 90% of its response. What I'm just trying to suggest is out of the 1.6 million people on treatment, government of Nigeria is covering 150,000, and the rest is Global Fund and PEPFAR. What if tomorrow we don't have those resources?
A very wonderful question, and we have to stop there.
And this is not a poor country. Nigeria is very rich. We're looking at the federal level. That's another discussion. But Dr. Alasey, we should also see how we can generate some of those resources.
We just have to stop you. We are very sorry. We are very sorry for that. Dr. Leo Zikeng, UNAIDS Country Director and Representative for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We really thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Esther Hindi Malim, who is the National Coordinator of Association of Women Living with HIV and AIDS. Thank you very much for coming to share your experience with us. And of course, let's also appreciate Dr. Alabi Salim, who is the Program Manager and Executive Secretary, Kwara State AIDS Control Agency. We thank you for joining us from Kwara, and we wish you all the best of luck too. And then finally, what's your final word as Nigeria joins the rest of the world to commemorate World AIDS Day
my plea for Nigerians is that we should know that Nigeria has done well in terms of our effort to end AIDS, but no matter how much resources the government is putting, the United States and Global Fund are putting, without the cooperation of Nigerians, we will not achieve what we want. So the contribution we want every Nigerian to make today is to know about their HIV status. Demand for the test, demand for service, know about the HIV status. Once you know about your HIV status, 50% of our problem is solved. Thank you.
Dr. Gambo Aliyu, Director General, National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA. And also, don't forget, 622 is the number to call for NACA. And of course, you can also reach state AIDS control centers as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Well,
every month.
Okay.
That it continues.
It will continue. It will continue. Thank you very much for joining us. That's all we can have on Good Morning Nigeria this morning. Thanks again. Tomorrow is another edition. I am Ademola Adeoye.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak from all the GMN crew. Have a pleasant day. Bye-bye.